Welcome, fellow changemakers. I'm Jen Sanchez, and my pronouns are she, Aya. On behalf of Intel, I'm honored to share this space with y'all today. Thank you, YWCA Metropolitan Phoenix, for being a fabulous community leader. Intel and YWCA are coming together again to do wonderful in Arizona. We're also elated to announce that Salt River Project, SRP, is joining us as a community changemaker for our Equity in STEAM Initiative 2.0. How wonderful is that? Intel has called Arizona home for more than 40 years of our history. We have been committed to uplifting the community around us. It is our goal to continue with that promise. The tech industry in Arizona is rapidly evolving, creating more high-skilled jobs statewide. Intel is investing $20 billion to build 2 new factories on our Ocotillo site in Chandler. For 15,000 jobs in various fields. And as this happens, we must make sure our community is reflected in those roles. Careers in STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics are at the forefront of innovation in our world. Ensuring women and people of color are represented in STEAM provides our industry with a diversity of looking to solve our world's most complex issues. For example, Intel and Maricopa County Colleges developed a semiconductor manufacturing program called Quick Start. The 2-week program prepares students for a rewarding career as a semiconductor technician with hands-on learning. Of our cohort participants, so 50% have identified as Hispanic and 50% said they are the first person in their family to attend a college class. Today, we will be listening to STEAM professionals talk about the racial and gender systemic barriers they have faced on their journeys and the important work they do to combat disparities in our community while blazing path for as professionals. Let's listen to understand. Before we move on, I'd like to recognize Hispanic Heritage Month. I'd like to acknowledge the generations of atrocities my ancestors, family, and community endured and overcame for me to stand here today. As an Ad Hope public school student from El Paso and first college graduate, I am grateful for the opportunities I've had to live a life I never could have imagined. I'd also like to celebrate the amazing contributions of the giants I stand on, like my parents who went to college later in life in their 30s and 40s. My mother recently retired after 30 years as a Head Start teacher. And my father retired as a college instructor. They make me one very proud daughter. Now, I'm excited to turn it over to Samantha Lopez, a chemical engineer at SRP.
Thanks for sharing that, Jennifer. I really appreciated that. And on behalf of SRP, thank you all for being here. This project is important because it's important for people with less representation to be exposed to stories and experiences from others with similar backgrounds. I know when I was deciding to become an engineer, I immediately looked for somebody that looked like me and sounded like me, and to try and get their experiences and how they paved their way to get there. I moved towards a STEAM career because of my interest in problem solving, and specifically that led me to math and science. I was able to stick with my chemical engineering degree because I was able to incorporate parts of myself regarding my culture when it came to studying. So I went to school in Rochester, New York, and when I got there, I was pretty homesick and was getting a lot of culture shock. And what did I do? Growing up, I played in a mariachi band, and over there I started up my own student group, and it was a mariachi. A lot of the members in it didn't speak any Spanish, but a lot of them were engineers. And it was great to come together through our shared love of music. And it was great for me to be able to share my culture with them. And it really helped me stick with my major because of those lifelong connections that I made. It's important to support women of color in our industry because it's an important investment in our workforce. If we don't include women of color in our recruiting and training, we really are missing out on a big chunk of the talent pool in terms of talent and experiences, which is something we try to do at SRP. So for example, a way that we try to teach new engineers about what are the possibilities on what they could work is we have a rotational engineering program, which I graduated from. And through that program, you are experiencing every 6 months a new department for 2 years. Going into SRP, I thought I was going to be more of a in-office engineer. And through that program, I found my love of field work. And now the majority of my work is at power plants. And it's because of that exposure and that helped build equity through all of our experiences that I get to enjoy my job so much. So thank you everyone for being here again, and it's lovely to be part of the conversation. And I'll turn it back over to the hosts.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Tara Nkrumah, and before we go any further, I'd like to just do the land acknowledgement, definitely before we go any deeper into this. And so we want to honor the original custodians of our land and acknowledge we are occupying the stolen land of the O'odham, Acamel, O'odham, and Hohokam people. And definitely, if you want to find out which land you are occupying, there's a link shown here for you to go and look into deeper. So I have had the privilege, and this being my second year, to facilitate this conversation of the voices in STEAM that are not often heard. And so as we go into this process, I want to make sure that not only do we share our stories, but definitely give voice to those who have and continue to be marginalized within the field. Just to give you a little bit of background of who I am an assistant professor at Arizona State University in the Teachers College. And my background is a science STEM educator for over 20 years. I've taught in the United States for most of those years, but I also taught for 7 years in West Africa, Ghana, at an international school. And so from there, I give a lot of my credit to the work that I do, which focuses on culturally relevant pedagogy, to my ability to, one, be able to connect with individuals who not only look like me, but definitely promote issues of equity within the field. And so in my work, I really focus on this idea of how can we not only give space to those who are marginalized, but how can those who have been and continue to be, how can we work to develop their ability to push back on those inequities? I always say that it's not about us trying to fix those who are underrepresented within the field, but it's rather, how can we fix the system that is so broken that often expects those who are of the marginalized communities to fit into a system that doesn't exist for them. And so a lot of my focus is really on how can we make the structures fit for, or actually change the structures so that those who are pushed out and excluded can be included. And so today I'm really excited to hear the stories of some wonderful individuals here today that will share their journey with us. And we're going to do things a little differently. If you came expecting to have a typical experience, then I'm going to disappoint you, because that's not my style. And definitely to really elevate the stories that they have to share about their lives, it has to be done in a way that is unique and that really focuses on their talents and their contributions to the field. So what we're going to do is I want to bring on my first person, and I'm intentionally not calling their name. One, because that's a part of my strategy, as they will, one, introduce themselves to you, but I've given them a really unique assignment for how I would like for them to introduce themselves, not to diminish their accomplishments and the hard work that they continue to do within their communities and within their field. But I definitely want to give you a picture of how unique they are just individually on a personal level. So I'm going to ask the first person to come on. And again, I'm not going to call names because that's a part of their whole introduction. And I've asked them to introduce themselves by, one, sharing with you something that is important to them as a way to get to know who they are, as well as learn about their background and what they bring to this space. So I will call on the first person to just turn your video on and begin the process.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Let me share my desktop. My name is Carla Bracamonte. I born in Hermosillo, Sonora. Let me know when you are able to see my screen.
We are seeing it, yes.
Okay, so I thought it was a good idea to show you in a timeline on about my life. As you can see, I have pictures of my kids around it because most of my life has been around them. So I born in Hermosillo, Sonora, and I was studying my career on informatics when I got pregnant with my first child, which is Valeria. Is the first one you can see here. In 1993, we came to this country, and I didn't speak English. I was pregnant with her, and my boyfriend, I was not even married. We got married here. And we were in Nogales. I left my career over there, and I don't regret it because it was either coming here or staying over there. I had options, but I didn't want to take those options. I wanted to have my daughter. And we came here, and I started working until the year 1990, in 1995, because I didn't have a permit to work. I studied English in and out, little by little, in free schools here, like Head Start, like many schools gave me the opportunity to take classes. But at the same time, I learned English with my daughter. She used to, when I had Pablo, which is the second one, and you can see it here in 1997, Valeria used to translate for me in the doctor office. And then I decided to start working after Pablo graduated. No, sorry, born. After Pablo born. And, and I started working in ASU. I used to clean restrooms, classrooms, and never-ending hallways. I used to shine all those highways with machines that were older than me. And it was a very tough time because my English was not too good. when I was cleaning one of the classrooms, algebra equation was there, and my coworker dared me, and she was like, you don't know how to resolve that equation. And I say, yeah, I can do it. And she said, why you don't go to school? And I didn't know, but she told me that I had 75% off because I was a stay worker. So I thought I have to do it. The other motivation is that someone asked my daughter, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, I want to be a cleaning lady like my mom. I love cleaning ladies. I am a cleaning lady, but I wanted her to think ahead. I wanted her to think bigger, you know? So I thought I have to give a good example to my kids. And I applied for school. And finally, in the year 2000, I got admitted to ASU in engineering school, computer science. In my second year, I got pregnant again with Pedro. And something very funny is that I had Pedro on a Friday, and I had a discrete math test on Monday. My kids tell me now, why you win, Mom? And I go like, I was an immigrant. I want to do everything exactly. I didn't want to disappoint anyone. So I was always trying to prove myself to everyone. I thought I was faking that I speak English, but sometimes I had to admit that I was able to speak English. I passed my TOEFL test in 2000, so that proved it. So when like 1 year before I graduated, I went to this job fair. And I was like, oh, these companies are so big. And I always have worked as custodial. I don't think I'm gonna to be able to get a job. But there was this guy in the table of Intel table, and his name is Arturo Morales. And he was like, hey, what are you Hispanic? Of course. And he was like, we need more people like you working in Intel. Do you want to work in Intel? And I was like, of course. The only thing I knew about Intel was Intel architecture because I had a class. But it sounds like a very good company for me in that time. And I applied for it, and I got an internship. I really love to work in Intel because you work with very smart people. You work with people that know what they're doing, and they don't judge you. I love it because everyone has an accent, and nobody was bothered by my accent. And I was like, oh, this is great. I had Chinese people, people from India, people from the East Coast. Everybody has an accent. So I felt so good that I was not like feeling bad because I had my big accent. And then when I was working there, I got passionate for image processing. We were working on streaming in that time, 2006, no Netflix, no Amazon Prime, anything like that. And in Intel, we worked very, very closely with all those companies to make stream a reality. So I told my manager, hey, I love image processing. And he goes like, do you know that Intel can pay a master's degree for you? And I go like, no, but if they pay for it, I want to go. And I went for my master's degree. In 2010, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in computer science and specialized on image processing. And I really enjoy it. And by that time, I was working on validation. And I also like software quality. When I was working as validator, I introduced a new program to give the opportunity to college students to come and work with us. So I was the lead of that program for about 2 years. And we had these college students and also high school students coming to the lab and listen to the video, to the audio, making sure lip sync, and the captions were on time and no macro blocking, and the audio was good enough. They were just supposed to answer questions. So we automated all that. And after that, I started to work on software quality in 2015. And I really enjoy it because there is where I discover my passion, which is quality. And that's the reason now I work as a software technical program manager. I have about 20 teams that work in different components that that go into a product: audio, video, Bluetooth, Ethernet, many components. But all these teams are in different countries. So I only get one person from that team coming to my meeting, where we sync up to make sure that we are good on the schedule, on the scope. We make sure that everything is on quality. And I love it because I have meetings very early in the morning and very late. So I have, during the day, I have time to be with my parents that are older, and they live next door to me. So in the next 5 years, I see myself growing still in this company. And I would like to be like a senior program manager. Okay, so my daughter graduated from medical school this year, and that little girl that made me come to this country now is making me so proud. And my son Pablo just got a work in Intel, so now he is working in the same company I work. And Pedro is working in no, he is in school in ASU in computer science. He is going to the same career I'm doing. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I took away so many nuggets. One, I love that you said everyone has an accent, and that was one of the things that really made you feel comfortable working there in Intel. Just thinking about my time in West Africa and having 65 different nationalities, and the beauty of hearing so many different languages spoken all the time is really a comforting feeling. So thank you for sharing that. I definitely have questions, but I want to save that for after our next panelist speaks, and then we will get into some more questions so that everyone can learn more about the wonderful things that you guys are doing. So my next panelist, again, I'm going to intentionally not call your name, because I would like for you to introduce yourself as was done with Carla. So, all right, next panelist.
Carla, do you mind unsharing your screen for us?
I thought it was unsharing. Oh, right here. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you.
All right. Our next panelist is just setting up for the introduction. All right, Joanna, could you go on, please? Thank you.
I apologize. I thought the first speaker was here and that she was going to go next.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you again for the opportunity. I want to start by introducing myself. So my name is Joanna Vallejo Elias. Yes, I have two last names, which speaks a lot about my background. So I am Hispanic, born and raised in Puerto Rico. My original last names are actually Vallejo Rodriguez, which represents my heritage from my father's side and my mother's side. And after coming to the United States and finding my significant other and getting married, I opted to still keep Vallejo, my first last name, which is very important to me because it really represents my upbringing and my heritage, right? But I still changed my second last name to honor the traditions in the United States. So I took my husband's last name, which is Elias. And with that being said, I have a first diagram to share with you guys. I actually have a physical kind of piece of art that is always hanging right here at the wall in my office. And this is a picture that depicts a very traditional activity that children engage in the mountains in Puerto Rico, which is where I grew up. It's very common to find kids, at least back in the day. I am not that young, so a couple of decades back. We used to just leave the house and go into the fields and play down in the creek, and we'll be gone for hours, and we'll take kites and fly our kites up in the hills, and we'll just return after several hours, and our parents were never worried as to what's happening. They knew that we could take care of ourselves. And so that particular diagram means a lot to me because it's not just an activity that I enjoyed, but notice that the kite is actually a Puerto Rican flag. And so that's something that my parents instilled in me. We were really poor. We had all the basic necessities. I never went hungry. I never had absence of clothes. I always have access to an education. But in retrospect, right, even though at the moment my childhood didn't seem like anything was lacking, in retrospect, yes, we were poor. I remember vividly my mom sewing holes in socks so that we could have something to wear, or them choosing to provide for us, but kind of taking away from things that they needed themselves, including medications for their own medical conditions. And so I know that I grew up poor, but I wasn't really lacking anything. And that's the beauty of it. And my parents always, always taught us to rise up to the top, to uphold our Christian values, to be of service to others. If you don't have anything physically that you could be service of, be service with your spirit, with your kindness, and to always uphold that kite, that flag of who you are, proud, and wing it around and represent the family in any way you can. And I took that with me because when I came to the States, I moved by myself, very first time that I moved out of my parents' home to follow my career and my dreams, right? And that was a very, very difficult decision. So all my upbringing is from Puerto Rico, all my education, including my bachelor's degree, I did it in Puerto Rico. And I was living at my parents' house while doing all my education, primarily because it's a cultural thing that the firstborn female is going to stay at home pretty much until she gets married, right? So it was very difficult for my parents to kind of let go of that idea. And so they really prefer that I live at home while I was completing my education. But then when it came time to decide to come to the States, they were very hesitant, very apprehensive, and that made it very challenging for me to make that bold decision of kind of not listen to their temporary advice, which was to not leave the island, right? So kind of go against their will and make that leap of faith that I was taking the right decision. And so I came to Missouri, to the Midwest, University of Missouri, and I got my PhD there. And that was very challenging, like I said, because I leave my home without a straightforward blessing, right? And I felt alone initially, I will confess to that. But again, it was through the Latin American Student Association in the University of Missouri and getting to know the people that I felt uplifted. And I remembered again to keep always waving that kite that represented me and to do my very best every step of the way. And so through getting to know other peers at the university, I actually signed up to be a member of the American Physiological Society since I was getting a degree in physiology. And the American Physiological Society actually has amazing programs to be able to sustain STEM and help minorities kind of complete the programs and represent in the workforce. And so I became a fellow of a very important fellowship in the American Physiological Society, the Porter Fellowship. And as you can see in this 50-year anniversary, there are different faces, different colors, males, females. This was the clue for me to find the necessary networking, for me to see myself and others and kind of believe that if they could do it, I could do it. That all I needed to do was remember my roots, continue to wave that kite that represented myself, and always do my very best. And just to make a long story short, I completed my degree in 2004. I was able to also pursue an education in UCLA, where I got my postdoctoral training. And eventually, I married my current love of my life, Daniel Elias. I met him coincidentally in a science conference that was intended to help minorities succeed in science. That's known as SACNAS. You probably heard of it. And we became very good friends at that moment, many, many years ago. And we started this relationship across the years, but always kind of putting the priority on my education. And it was after I completed my education that we finally decided to get married. And I'm blessed to have 2 girls that are pretty much my motivation to keep pushing forward, to teach them exactly the same principles that my parents taught me, and to allow them then to, again, do the same, to move forward in the field and be, again, 2 ladies that hopefully are also a face that represents how minorities and females in particular can rise within the STEM field. And the last thing I'm going to say is, because all these programs were very helpful in boosting my confidence and keeping me grounded and being able to succeed into the professional that I'm today, I have taken a very personal investment into service back to these programs so that I can also be a face, right, that inspire the younger generation to pursue their dreams and accomplish whatever they set their minds into. So it's my way of paying back to all of the wonderful support that I received during my education. So I've been working at Midwestern University for 15 years now. I love being an educator. I teach all different degrees of medical professionals between an institution. I also have the opportunity to do research and service all combined. And that, together with the blessing of having a wonderful husband and my 2 kids, has been the biggest accomplishment I ever done in life. And I know that my mom, who is in heaven, is very proud of all that she taught me. And my dad, who still lives, constantly tell me how proud he is of me. So even though they did not support my move to the States back on the day, they don't regret it now in retrospect. They feel strongly that I made the right decision and I made the family proud. So thank you again for the invitation. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing your story. That's beautiful. And definitely, I love the flag. That was really nice, the kite and all of that. So thank you. So we're now moving on to our last panelist to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into some more deep questions related to their work and how they got into the field. So I'd like to invite the last panelist to give us your important item as you introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jolene Begay. So I will first introduce myself in my native language. So Ya'at'e Jolene Begay Yanashia, Tohe Glini Nishle, Kiani Bashichin, Kodich Eatni Dashiche, Tabaha Deshanella. So as Navajo, we always introduce ourselves in our 4 clans that identify the 2 families we come from, the mother side and the father side. And I am so happy to be here with everyone. I'm really honored to be representing my tribe. I'm Navajo. I was born and raised on the Navajo Reservation. I'm an Intel employee as this year's 21 years. I am a research and development engineer located in Arizona. And one of the items I brought with me today is very not only sacred, and I'm very honored to be displaying this this item simply because there's a lot of representation behind a handmade woven belt. This is what they call a sash belt. It's pretty long, and it is woven by hand, and the yarn has a lot of special meaning. behind how the yarn is prepared. You can see here the specific designs that are created when weaving a belt. And the colors also represent different meanings. So the colors can vary from any range that, colors can come by. But there's always a meaning behind the art that is developed in such beautiful art such as this, right? So I'm proud to announce that my brother actually wove this belt for me. And he is a very skilled weaver, and his designs are made on the spot. He doesn't, draw them out or prepare his designs. Once he prepares the yarn, he basically just goes into his weaving tool setup, and he just creates as he starts weaving. So it's very special to me in a sense that it reminds me of, the traditions that we have growing up in the Navajo culture. These sash belts are used in the ceremonies. They are a very valued gift to receive, especially for me, especially when it comes from a family member. And I am so proud of my brother that he has developed this skill. And today we're talking about, encouraging individuals in the STEAM, the science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics areas, right? And so to me, this is a good representation, because not only the mathematics, but the design and artwork that goes into weaving such a beautiful piece of art is very detailed, very time consuming. And when my brother weaves these, he has to have a positive mind, positive energy, so that, when the gift is handed over to such an individual, the feelings and the whole value behind our traditions are passed on to that next person, and they are displaying and wearing your art anywhere they wear the type of material. So for me, I'm always honored to receive such hand-woven or handmade items from artists within any Native culture. Another item here is the earrings here. These are abalone shell. And again, that's another part of nature, right? And so the shell comes from the water. And so the water source is a very sacred part of who we are as individuals, who we are as Native Americans. So everything, I've been taught that everything does have a meaning, whether it be, the success of your career. There's a whole story that is formulated to get to one point, from one point to another. And so it's, there's always a definition or a reason why things happen. And I really encourage people to recognize, and reflect on what their past has brought them to it. Everyone has a story, and not all the stories are grand and bright, right? A lot of us face challenges. It doesn't matter what race we come from, what ethnicity we come from, what parts of the world we come from. We always have a challenge that we have faced. And so, but it's always good to reflect on the challenges you've overcome, so that you can continue to push yourself forward to become a better person. That's how I view life, and that's how I try to teach my kids. I am a proud parent of 4 kids and a grandchild of 3 years old. So all of my kids are young adults, and they are self-sufficient, and working to be on their own. So one of the primary visions, and one of my ambitions, and just something I really love to focus on, is promoting STEAM. So I come from the Navajo culture, born and raised on the Navajo reservation in a small rural town called Chinle, Arizona. And growing up, I had no understanding or no structure of what engineering entailed. And when I was first introduced to the computer in the 6th grade in my computer class, I was so fascinated with that big chunk of the big computers that we were introduced to. And I just was fascinated. I got curious. I wanted to understand how I could, how the computer worked. And let alone, I had no idea I'd be working for one of the top major, companies who actually build, the microprocessors to bring technology live to many places of the world, to every, accessibility to everybody across the world. And I'm very proud to be a part of this company. And so going back to reflecting on how I grew up, I understood that because I did not know what engineering was, I wanted to bring that change and bring that understanding to the youth, to Native youth, at an earlier age than I was introduced to. And so my passion to bring that change evolves around, bringing hands-on activities, any type of learning regarding STEM, any way to encourage youth who look like me, right? Who are I guess not unrecognized, but who are a smaller part of the communities who may not have access to technology. I want them to see that they can reach these goals to become an engineer. And it took me many challenges. It took me many triumphs and networks, building to reach where I'm at. So I didn't do this alone. And I think that's one thing that the Native, communities need to be a little bit more open to, is to be open to asking for help, to be open to receiving guidance, and from anybody. We don't have to, a lot of my connections are not specifically with just Native Americans. I have a whole broad of connections from many ethnicities. And I think just being open to that and being open to learning and really being, finding that drive within yourself to build that courage, build your confidence, and, take those risks to reach the goals that you pursue for yourself. Dream big. That's my motto, is to dream big and go for it. And the accomplishments that you achieve are going to be eye-opening, and it's going to be pretty fascinating when you accomplish those goals and probably discover something new about yourself. And that's simply what I did. Is I again discovered something that I was passionate about, and now giving back to the communities and really trying to encourage more Native, not only females, but males, to pursue and even just try to understand what STEAM and STEM is. I think that's an introduction to possibly something they were never introduced to or aware of. And that's my ultimate goal as a leader and as a part of the Native community. I feel like I'm responsible to bring that positive change to the community. So thank you again for having us, and I look forward to this amazing event.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jolene, for sharing your story. And dreaming big definitely is something that will stay with me. I want to invite Carla and Joanna to just turn your video on. I know we never have enough time, but I'm definitely going to squeeze in some questions because I think it's really important for our audience to hear what you have to share. And so, Jolene, you kind of led me into this, and I'm really interested in hearing from all of you, but I'm going to start first with Jolene and answering this question. And so, as you've all shared about your life, and you've definitely given us some insight on where you come from, your values, and what brought you through at times when obviously it was not easy. And so we know that life experiences can benefit others. I've definitely benefited from hearing your stories today, and I'm sure our audience as well. But we also know that the knowledge gained and the skills acquired by women in color can be helpful for those who are coming after us. And so I am interested in, and this is really key, besides our Black and brown girls who are looking at us now, seeing us as models for them to aspire to get to where we are, who else needs to hear your story and why? Besides the Black and brown girls. So Jolie, if you could start first.
Sure. And that's a great question. And that's actually something I'm trying to drive within the organization here at Intel. So Intel has what they call an ERG, Employee Resource Group, called the Intel Native American Network. And I've led the group, and I've also now a member. So just driving as a leader, the importance of, again, networking and building that network. It's not, I encourage everyone to consider this, is to embrace each other as humans. I feel, this is only a personal feeling here, opinion, that I feel like as people, we are stuck in our trauma, in our past trauma. Every ethnicity has gone through some type of trauma. It doesn't matter what color you are, where you're from. I feel like we're stuck in those traumatic, the history, right? And in order to get to heal, I feel like we have to come to a point in our life where we are open not only to healing, but also open to embracing others who have their own stories. And this includes all ethnicities. And I feel like once we get to that point, I think the world can be such a better place. I think we once we're open to, I'll just speak in reference to Native American communities. So there are many different tribes. We have different traditions, we have different cultures. And I look at our tribes as a big puzzle. So we have, different edges, we have different shapes, but I feel as a Native American community, we come together. We definitely come together and we piece those puzzles together, right? But I think that can be extended to other ethnicities. It doesn't matter what color you are, where you're from. Building that big puzzle, that big, beautiful puzzle will definitely bring a different light to all ethnicities, Black, brown, yellow, pink, purple. It will shed light in a different way about life. So that's my feedback there.
Thank you for that, Jolene. Johanna.
Thank you, Jolene. That actually set a very beautiful and important foundation, right? In this era, we talk a lot about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But one aspect that I firmly believe we need to emphasize is that inclusion component. Is everyone. We all have different life experiences. We all had challenges in our trajectory. Males, females, doesn't matter what background, doesn't matter what race, what country you came here from. We all had experienced those challenges. And so we need to remember, right, that at any point in our lives, we have felt that imposter syndrome that clouds our mind, that make us question whether we're on the right track, whether we're doing the right thing, whether others are seeing us for the right reasons. We all been there, right? And so if I can be that voice, that example to others, regardless of who they are, where they come from, as to I have been there, I have felt that way, and I have managed to overcome it. And what are the strategies that I use to do that? Then that is exactly right. The example that I was called to provide. I was speaking about my family, right? That's the attitude of service that my parents always instill in me.
Thank you. All right, Carla.
Okay, so I'm gonna to go through the other side. Also, the husbands need to understand that sometimes the women want to go above and beyond, and they need to support their wife. And my husband always support me. He was always with me. We had struggles. I'm not saying that we didn't. When I start making a little bit more money, he felt like, oh, what's going on? But it's like we have to adjust each other. Is a good for everyone. He had his own goals, and I support him. And so all the family have to understand what goals each one they have, and help each other, support each other, and do not believe that because I'm an engineer, I'm the center of the universe. No. We are all the family together, and that's how we go together. So we have to support each other in our families.
Awesome. Thank you, Carla. And you bring up a really good point, all of you, when we think about who else needs to hear our stories as it relates to our struggles, our successes, the things that we celebrate in this field. And I'm reminded that this past summer, I do a lot of summer programs for girls of color in STEM. And this summer, we actually had 4 young men who signed up, high school age students who signed up for what was primarily a girls' camp. And it was directed at development and also giving space to the girls to have their experiences and to feel like they were prioritized. And it was really interesting, while this camp was directed at girls and their experiences and how can they be uplifted, the young boys became aware that they didn't see girls in their STEM classes. And that was something for them that was eye-opening. High school students, when I asked them the question, have you seen girls of color in your class? And they said, no. And they had not thought of that before. So I say this to say to you that awareness needs to be brought to all, because it has been so normalized that young boys, primarily white, are the face of the field. And so when they don't see us, they don't really concern themselves because that's what they've seen and they don't notice it as a problem. So I really appreciate all of you sharing. And part of why we're here today is to, one, bring attention to the grant that we're offering for this very purpose of opening up opportunities, as was shared earlier in your conversations about access. I remember, Carla, you talked earlier about someone told you, a man I remember from Intel, about what Intel could offer. Would you like to work at Intel? And so it's really this opportunity of sharing what is there for others, because often we don't know. And so I'm gonna now turn it over to Debbie to just share a little bit more about the Voices in STEAM and the grant opportunities that we're also hoping to offer, so that we can have more young people that look like us in the field, so that we can end this conversation about why are we underrepresented and show more equity in the field. So Debbie, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you to my guests.
Thank you, Dr. Nkrumah. Thank you, panelists, Jolene and Joanna and Carla. I am so moved by the depth and the beauty of your comments and how you demonstrated your lived experience and what brings you to where you are today. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Thank you again, also, Dr. Nkrumah, for shaking it up. You know, these are not your typical panels, and that's what YWCA loves. We love getting to this important work in a different way. I'm here representing YWCA. As you may know, and if you don't yet, you'll learn very soon, we're dedicated to eliminating racism and empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. And that first part of our mission, eliminating racism and empowering women, ties exactly to this STEAM project and our important partnership with Intel, and welcoming our new partner, SRP, to this work. How'd it come about? Well, we all know, we've heard through the stories that gender gap is ginormous in the STEAM pipeline. And again, as I've mentioned, we approach all of our work, and this STEAM work especially, through the lens of race and gender equity. We know Arizona's not just the next tech hub, it is the tech hub right now, and the opportunity is it is incredible for adults as well as our young people, particularly our young girls and people of color. So we wanted to support and engage with Intel to try to improve that landscape. So what's one way to do it? Let's give out some money. We've got $50,000 graciously provided by our partners. We're going to give it all out, give it all away. Grants are going to be available just like last year. Grants are going to be available for up to $2,500. And we're inviting many different types of organizations to apply. We are focusing on smaller organizations and teachers to be sure that we get the funding. One of my colleagues really talks about the ground truth, to get the funding and the opportunities to the ground truth so we can make some real change in this field. Next slide, I think. Again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the information that you just heard. We know these are accessible. Yes, we know the statistics. There's room, however, for all of us to help grow and fulfill that pipeline. But let's really talk about how to get some of this money. Can we switch to that? So the qualifications for this grant, we're also in this work not only trying to impact the system, as Dr. Tara mentioned, impact the system that keeps us out, but we're also impacting the system of philanthropy and how a lot of times folks have to jump through lots of hoops to get access to funding. We're making it a really simple application. We've really focused on trying to understand what we need to know to make the decisions. The applications are either available for 501c3 organizations or a public or charter school teacher. The 501c3s need to have a budget of less than $1 million. The grants for teachers generally are distributed through your district's foundation, so that $1 million isn't the barrier there, but you need a fiscal agent to hold this. All the projects will support Arizona residents. So not just Maricopa County, although that's where a majority of the funds went last time. It's open to the entire state. So let's put our broad distribution hats on and try to get this information out to a lot of folks. The projects will begin next year, anytime between February 2023 and September 2023. We know these things take time, and there's also some important parts of how this program values and impacts this industry, the STEAM industry. The kickoff event, you're at it, and the grant applications are open starting today. The grant applications period will close on November 30th. We will have a group of individuals, both from our partners, from YWCA, and I believe from previous grantees, reviewing those grants to make recommendations and decisions on how those funds get delivered. Again, that's kind of, shaking in the face of typical philanthropy. We want to ask the people that have used it before, who should be using this money next. On January 14th, we'll have an exciting opportunity celebrating in community and announce the grant awards on January 14th. It's really easy to apply. Here's your website, ywcaaz.org, Equity in STEAM. My team are all available to answer your questions. we are so excited about it. And again, my notes say that the application process should take less than 30 minutes to complete. This is not a big onerous kind of thing. And then, you know, give us a call if you have questions, connect with us however you'd like. All those platforms, and of course, you know, the old-fashioned way by email or phone probably even works too. But you know, this is STEAM. We're in technology here. I want to say thank you again to the fabulous panel. I want to say thank you to the team that put this together and to our partnerships with Intel and SRP. We are really together making a model that's going to really fill this pipeline full of talented individuals to make Arizona wonderful.